Information is an instrument, is a tool.
The Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. He's a trained journalist. He's a lawyer of many years' experience. He has been a deputy minister for information. He's been a substantive minister for information. He's been a minister for works and housing. And he is the current member of parliament for the Oppong constituency in the eastern region of the Republic of Ghana.
Misinformation is, and there are two types of it. There's the regular misinformation, and then there's the information transmission has always been parallel with technology. When technology got to the point where people could write, we had the advent of what people called scribes, and now you have social media, which is interesting because for all the ones I've spoken about, media was not democratized. Today it's been democratized because of social media. So I pick up my phone, I have a channel with 1 million people on X, and there's no editor, there's no editorial board, there's nobody to tell me what to put in, and I can tweet something. This is why you are now seeing a lot of. So the framers of our constitution in their wisdom included that as part of the clauses under the right to free expression, that everybody within the Ghanaian jurisdiction has a right to access information that is available to any public institution. What was missing was
You are warmly welcome to Legal Social with me, Hamida Nuhu. On this podcast, we discuss legal and social issues with the aim to empower, enlighten, and educate the general public. I'm really happy you could be here today. You are warmly welcome once again, and I would appreciate it. It would mean a lot to me if you could like, comment, and share our videos. Thank you so much. Honorable Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, we are so glad and honored that you have been able to join us this morning to discuss this very important topic. You're welcome.
Thanks for inviting me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. And you?
I'm okay.
Parliament just resumed, but you found time to be here. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Thank
I think it's a lovely thing you're doing, which seeks to bring the law to the people. So I'm happy to be part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So to start with, and like I said in my introduction, I think that you're one of the best people to speak about this. Looking at your background as a trained journalist, you've been in the journalism space for many years. You've become a lawyer, you've become a minister. So all around you is information, So I would like to start by asking you, what is information before we go to misinformation, which is our topic for today?
Information is, if I may try to define it, is an instrument, is a tool that facilitates communication between various persons. So if I want to communicate with you, the instrument that we will use is information. I would have to package whatever it is that I want to transmit to you in a bubble called information. And I would then have to transmit that information through various media to you. So sometimes when people talk of media are channels through which information is transmitted from one party to another. So information itself is an instrument, is a tool, is a package, which has content in it. And that content is then transmitted through channels from one party to another.
Excellent. So I know before the advent of social media, right now, somebody says one thing in a minute and is all over the world because of, the advent of social media. Technology has advanced a lot and we have all these things. But I'm sure pre-social media, information did not travel so fast.
That's true.
And because now it just moves so quickly, the tendency for people to misinterpret things and, for that matter, misinform has become really great. So what would you say, or how would you define misinformation?
Misinformation is the packaging of information that does not have the same level of, may I say, integrity that regular information must have. and transmitting that adulterated information to recipients of information. And there are two types of it. There's the regular misinformation, and then there's the disinformation. So, for example, as I tried to define earlier, information is a packaging of content of some sort, which is then transmitted. Now, when that content is adulterated, then the package is not exactly information. It's now misinformation. So let's say this is a green mug. If I want to transmit information to you about it, properly so-called, what I need to do is to share to you or to transmit to you either in writing or in speech that this is a green mug. Say, for example, I have a challenge with identifying colors, and I think that this is gray. And I transmit to you that this is a gray mug. I have misinformed you. What I have packaged and I have transmitted to you is misinformation.
Right.
And it is because I may have a challenge with identifying colors. It is not deliberate.
Right.
But the content within this bubble which I've transmitted to you is adulterated. It doesn't have the same level of integrity
Right.
as regular information should have.
Right.
If, however, I deliberately decide to tell you that this is a blue bowl because I intend to deceive or to cause you to go on a certain path by sending to you information that lacks integrity, then what I've done is that I have disinformed you. So there's information, there's misinformation, there's disinformation. Now, let me go back to your earlier point about social media and all. Actually, misinformation and disinformation are not new. They've been there right from the very beginning of information transmission. And information transmission has always been parallel with technology. So in the olden days when there was no technology to write, information was transmitted by word of mouth. So you could have a lot of misinformation and disinformation going along with it. And also in the normal management of society, people disinform as an instrument to achieve various ends. People misinform just because they didn't hear it well, or as it was being passed on, the integrity of that information has reduced.
Mm-hmm.
When technology got to the point where people could write, we had the advent of a people called scribes. So they would be in the palace or in the courts, and they would take down what has been transmitted.
Okay.
And sometimes in the interpretation of what they have heard and what they are scribing, they may misinform. They may also inform properly.
Right.
When technology then gone further to the ability to multi-produce written material, that's the era of the printing press, then the newspaper era boomed because now they could just print something and run 20,000 copies and distribute all around town. So again, you had misinformation. And when people now started owning presses for various purposes, some may deliberately either misinform or disinform. You then got to the electronic waves where there was radio. So when the radio waves were invented, you didn't now need for a few hours before somebody could then do a typesetting and print and run copies and bring it. Now, within minutes, you could speak into a microphone and somebody who was 20,000 miles away could hear you. So around the Second World War, you'll find Winston Churchill doing a lot of broadcasts. And those who write on the theory of misinformation, some argue that he was doing a lot of misinformation. Because even when the Allied forces were losing the war, he was on the BBC announcing that we are winning the war, we are defeating them in the air and on the beaches, as a tool to boost the morale of his soldiers. But actually what he was doing included a lot of disinformation. He was not even misinforming, he was disinforming. Right. Some say it's propaganda, etc. But the theorists have a view. And then you have the television era, where now it's even faster. You can hear the sound and see the picture. So then it got a bit worse, where the television directors will tell you that we can cheat in this production. So the very same thing, they have ways of cheating the production. And sometimes you, the viewer, may not even notice that this thing was shot over 3-4 days, but they've cheated and put things in it. And now you have social media, which is interesting because for all the ones I've spoken about, media was not democratized. It was expensive to own the production suite of media. So to own a television or radio platform was a very big deal. And that also ensured that responsibility was observed, so people were not abusing it. Today it's been democratized because of social media. So I pick up my phone. I have a channel with 1 million people on X, and there's no editor. There's no editorial board. There's nobody to tell me what to put in, and I can tweet something. This is why you are now seeing a lot of misinformation and disinformation, because the controls have been taken away and it's now been democratized.
Wow. Excellent. It's interesting you mentioned about control, because the next question I was going to ask you was, as a stakeholder, because as a member of parliament, your main job in parliament is to pass laws that should protect us, from things like misinformation. I had time to scan through the what's the act on the
the Electronic
Communications Act, because I was looking for specific provisions on misinformation. Unfortunately, I did not find any. So I'm wondering, is there like a plan in Parliament to pass a law on misinformation, because it's such a big deal. It's causing a lot of problems. It can even affect the outcomes of elections, etc.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if there's something going on in Parliament towards.
Yeah. So let me take you back to the Constitution. There are about 3 provisions in the Constitution 1992 which give us the right to free expression in the first place. I think Article 21, then 162 and 163 will deal with free media, NMC and its related matters. But those are the provisions that, first of all, give us the right to free expression. A lot of young people in Ghana today do not know that there were times in our history when this right to speak freely and express yourself freely was not there.
Yeah.
Today, because of the Constitution 1992, these provisions, there's a right to free expression. But the same Constitution also then puts what we call a clawback clause, which says that the right to free expression is not unfettered, and that it is subject to reasonable laws that will protect public safety and related matters, the dignity of people, etc. So at any point in time, the Constitution allows that despite the Article 21 rights to free speech and expression, other laws can be passed to protect the public safety, the dignity of people, etc., from the excesses of free expression. And today you'll find a few laws. There used to be a law called the Criminal Libel Law.
Yeah.
In the Kufuor administration, we were of the view that it was an onerous piece of legislation and was being abused, so it was repealed. When Kufuor was the Attorney General at the time, it was repealed. At that time, if you published something that was false or was offensive, you could go to jail under the Criminal Libel Law.
Right.
Now, since that was taken away, there are about 2 pieces of legislation that still exist today.
Okay.
One is the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29. And you'll find, I think, between sections 207 and 208, provisions that are being used today to try and control a bit of the excesses. So there's a provision on offensive conduct conducive to the breach of the peace. That's section 207.
Right.
And then there's a provision in 208 on publication of false news with the intent to cause fear and panic.
Right.
These are pieces of legislation that are still on the books, and they are being used to fetter the right to free expression. The other is in section 76 of the Electronic Communications Act, which also says that if you knowingly publish information that can affect public safety through electronic means, again, you are liable and you've committed an offense. Beyond these provisions, now the government is contemplating a misinformation and disinformation law.
Okay.
Which they've drafted and they're engaging stakeholders for. But we're of the view that what they've drafted, though the intention is good, what they've drafted is a dangerous piece of legislation and must not be allowed to pass.
Okay. All right. It's interesting you would say is a dangerous piece of legislation. I don't know what is in it. I haven't seen it. But I would expect that if there's any such, document before Parliament, it should really, really be if you like, very strict on social media, because clearly there are no fetters.
Yeah.
Everyone just gets up and then whatever they decide to communicate, they throw it out there and then it's just going round. So would Parliament be looking at, I don't mean take away people's right to, or take away their freedom of speech as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution. But what specific provisions are you looking to put in the Act to make sure that we don't continue to go through what we go through at the moment in terms of how people just misrepresent everything and then, put it out there?
So currently, the draft which the Communications Ministry is engaging stakeholders on purports to create, may I say, a court or a tribunal under the ministry, an administrative court or tribunal under the ministry,
Okay.
which will make a determination of what is misinformation and what is disinformation, and then proceed to exact sanctions on quote-unquote offenders.
Okay.
We think that that is dangerous
Okay.
because it is subject to a lot of abuse from the executive
Mm-hmm.
branch. Remember, there are three arms or three branches of government:
Right.
the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. There's a reason for which, when it comes to offenses, even if the executive is of the view that you have committed an offense, they will proceed to the judiciary and prosecute you on a certain number of charges and leave it to the judiciary to make a determination whether you've committed an offense or not, so that we've separated those powers. Now, the first challenge is that if you leave it to the executive through one of its agencies to make a determination that this is misinformation or this is disinformation, it's subject to a lot of abuse. Tomorrow, if I publish a particular opinion or a view, it could easily be misinterpreted by whoever is in the executive as being misinformation or disinformation, and I could be shackled for that view.
Right.
So we think as a first step, the determination should be properly done by the judiciary, not by the executive branch. Secondly, we also think that the judiciary needs to establish very high thresholds for determining what is misinformation or what is disinformation. And here's the reason. If the thresholds are not high enough, it will begin to eat away the right to free expression.
Right.
The whole foundation of our democracy is a society in which multiple people have the right to express multiple views. And they're even allowed to make mistakes while they express those views.
Yeah.
When you get to a point where now the threshold is so low that anything you say that does not amount to stricto sensu a truth or a fact becomes an offense, you are now clawing back the rights to free expression, and you won't get the best out of the society.
Right.
So while in principle, people like us agree that you need to do something about the excesses that are ongoing, we think that it should be left to the courts to determine, but the courts should also then have a high threshold so that they don't eat away the rights to free expression. What they should go for is clear disinformation, where you see that people have clearly made up their mind to fabricate content that doesn't have integrity, content that is false, and to push it up for the purpose of achieving a particular end, be it ethnic, religious, political, whatever. That is what the court should clamp down on.
Excellent. I mean, that's a very brilliant point. And I agree with the fact that we should not leave it to the executive to determine what is information, disinformation. Because as it is already, the current dispensation of our democracy seem to have concentrated a lot of powers on the executive. So if it is the duty of the judiciary to interpret and then interpret the laws, then they should be in a position to determine that this and that should be. Excellent point. I like that. Kojo, I'm wondering, is there anything that is being done to ensure that accurate information is distributed out there?
Yes. So Article 21(1)(f) provides what we call the right to information. So the framers of our Constitution, in their wisdom, included that as part of the clauses under the right to free expression, that everybody within the Ghanaian jurisdiction has a right to access information that is available to any public institution. What was missing was a procedural act that will guide you on how to access that information. So you recall from the days of Jerry Rawlings, John Ajay Kufuor, John Evans Atta Mills, John Dramani Mahama, they all struggled with passing the Right to Information Act. Nana Danko Akufo-Addo, who has always been very strong on constitutional provisions when he became president, said, go for it. I was his information minister at the time. And so we went to Parliament and got the Right to Information Act passed. And what the Right to Information Act has done is that it has now made it very easy for you to access official information just by going through a process. Why? So that you are not left to struggle for information, and therefore you are able to access information with integrity, the right information. So the days when you are speculating and wondering and throwing things in there, those days are over. If you really intend to get information, we just have to invoke Article 21(1)(f) and then the Right to Information Act, right to the appropriate public institution that has the information and get that information. That's one. Number two, you would also realize that a lot of work was done in our era, and I think it's still being continued, to gather information with integrity from particularly within the public space and push it out there. So when I was information minister, for example, we set up what we call the minister's press briefings about 3 times a week, Sundays, I think Tuesdays and Thursdays. We created social platforms that allowed us to push a lot of information out there. We created a newsroom at the Information Services Department. We actually created a whole online system for gathering information from the ministries, departments, and agencies and pushing it out on a regular basis. We deepened interaction with the media aimed at churning out a lot of information. All of this designed to ensure that information is made available as much as possible so that you are not left to scramble or speculate for information. I've seen the current Minister for Government Communications has rebranded it. I think they now call it the Government Accountability Platform. You know, we're in an era of...
They know, right? Everything is changing.
They have rebranded it. But, you know, I see the effort to also allow ministers to come out and put out. We also went down to even include heads of agencies. I haven't seen that currently, but ours was in an exercise to have a lot more transparency, get heads of agencies, you know, to also come out and put out information. So there's work going on. I think what needs to happen is that our media in particular has to pay more attention to the official sources of information, has to get a lot more experts who have a deep understanding of a lot of these technical areas so that they can also break down this information for the Ghanaian public.
Okay, brilliant. My next point would be, I have recently learned a word called pre-bunking.
What is that? You have to educate me.
I know. You know, before, I mean, everybody, I'm sure, knows, about debunking. Somebody says something, Kojo has said this, and it turns out to be untrue. It could be misinformation or disinformation. Then Kojo will now come out and then, debunk. I didn't know there was something called pre-bunking. And it's pretty much like before anything is put out there, you should first of all find out its veracity before, because you don't wait for it to be done for you to now, and I thought it's a very interesting thing. And I'm thinking that maybe the civic education,
the
people, NCC, the National Civic Education, Commission, they should be able to, go around the country and then educate people on such concepts. Because apart from the ministry, like your ministry started such a great initiative, bringing the information to the people so that they know it's from the right source. There are so many other people, the general public, who probably are not giving to taking their source of information from
the right sources.
These kind of, So is there a way that Parliament can work with NCCE to embark on educating the public?
So I don't share that view. I think that leaving it to the NCCE or to Parliament will keep us in the old frame that we've still been operating. Information is now being democratized. Information production and dissemination has now been democratized so much that the risk of misinformation and disinformation is at its peak.
It's too
In
high.
fact, I think it was the World Economic Forum in 2024 that described it as one of the biggest threats that we are facing today.
Yeah, I saw that.
So waiting for civic education or even parliament will leave us where we are. I think there needs to be a reorientation of the people who manage information across the spheres of government.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just left to the Minister for Government Information or the spokesperson of the president.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that all public offices must understand is a need today.
Right.
Whatever you are doing, even at the district assembly level or at the office of the member of parliament or at the passport office or wherever, is subject to the risk of misinformation and disinformation. And therefore, you must take information management 10 times as seriously as you were doing.
Yeah.
And what that means is that you need people who will design your information management programs for you at whatever level. Are you at DVLA? Are you at an assembly? Are you running a government program? One government program, program. Who is the information manager for that program?
Right.
And that person is to design a whole information management program, which includes a pre-bunking component, or what the Americans will call the pre-battle component. So essentially what it is that you anticipate the possible misinformation or disinformation that could come. Previously, they used to call it frequently asked questions, FAQ. So you anticipate what are the likely questions that people will be asking about this. And you ensure that even before the matter comes up, you have pumped all of that into the public domain. It helps to shape the conversation. It helps people to begin to understand, and it helps to water down some of the apprehensions so that by the time the main dose of information or announcement comes in, people have a certain understanding. So you realize that when COVID came, initially we were waiting for the president to do his COVID addresses on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided to do a lot of pre-bunking on the Thursdays before the president speaks on Sunday. So you notice that the Ministry of Information will then bring all the experts together, Ghana Health Service, sometimes the security agencies, etc., to do a lot of pre-bunking or pre-battles to explain and talk through the issue, show the data, let people understand before the president comes to speak on Sunday. So by the time the president speaks and makes an announcement, you understand why he's going this way or why he's going that way. And then if you needed further explanation, on Tuesday, we'll come back with another press briefing to provide further details on what the president has. So pre-bunking, or what the Americans call pre-battles, is part of the information management architecture today because of the risk that is being faced with a lot of misinformation and disinformation. But you need a lot of information managers all over the place to understand, to program, and then to implement.
Excellent. When I actually mentioned the NCCE, I was looking at, the situation where people just get up and then public officials, become a target for them, because you find people writing all kinds of things on social media, and then you see the, rebuttals coming from, the public officials. This is completely false. I mean, various defamation suits going on and all that. So I was talking about it, or asking in terms of the NCC being the body that is mandated to educate the general public. So they could devise, a means of educating the public that if you go around, propagating information or saying things about someone,
it constitutes an offense.
Exactly.
So that I would agree with.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I was looking at.
That I would agree with.
All right. So it's actually been brilliant. I'm learning a lot from you at the moment, and then I hope everyone else is learning as well, and like I said here, our aim is to educate, enlighten, and then empower the public. So let's go back just a little bit. Would you say that this information has if you like, a deliberate aspect to it. Like when people are engaged in disinformation, they know that what they are saying about ABCD is absolutely false.
Yes.
But their intention is to say it.
Yeah.
Maybe to.
Yeah.
Right.
So the difference between misinformation and disinformation is that misinformation is inadvertent. And that could be based on several factors. Probably I didn't get the understanding well, and therefore in my transmission of it, I have adulterated it. Disinformation is where the person, as in the producer of the content, knows that it is not true.
Yeah.
But they have deliberately packaged it with the view to transmit it to achieve a certain end. And it often happens in the political, ethnic, and religious circles. So in the political space, you have people who cook up stories just to try to engineer a lot of hatred and disaffection for other people.
Yeah.
And they push it out there. You have all of these guys who've opened online channels.
Crazy.
And all they do is that they just fabricate stories about people, push it out there with the view to engineer hate and, disaffection for political opponents. You have people within the jurisdiction, sometimes even in mainstream media, who will come up with a concocted story about somebody and will just push it out there just with the view to engineer disaffection for people. I noticed that the current draft bill that the government is working on has a component on hate speech. Again, if they are able to fine-tune it and, for example, take the determination to the courts and not by the executive and set the thresholds properly, it's something that will be welcome so that this whole exercise of disinformation can be properly tackled. But even beyond the new legislation they are looking at, today's pieces of legislation have enough room that, if well set on thresholds, can be applied. There's also the famous, defamation opportunities. If it doesn't amount to something that injures the public peace or public safety, the victim can take up, defamation. Quite recently, I sued one of the media houses and a number of journalists for defamation. And they came in and requested to settle. We settled and took the, settlement agreement to the courts to admit same. So I also believe very much in defamation suits, that victims should not just sit by and do the enyehri. Sue them.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really like one major, point is a good remedy, but I'm sure we would agree that it is not everyone who is positioned to, go to court, because going to court,
It's expensive.
It's expensive. It costs money, time, and everything, So is it possible to, again, because you are a member of parliament, apart from defamation, are there other remedies that should be open to people who suffer, disinformation? Because not everyone is able to, like I said, to go to court. And so you just find most people, what I see these days, a lot of people are defamed badly, and then they come up and, just ask that, can the perpetrators, retract and apologize? So it's like retracted every time, and then people like keep going back to it. Is there anything else that can be done
beyond defamation suits? I don't see what else can be more effective. There are two sides of it. You either go civil or you go criminal. The criminal provisions are the ones that I've tried to outline.
Okay.
The current misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech bill that they are contemplating seeks to strengthen the criminal side of it. But that is what I'm saying. The way they've contemplated it is problematic, it's dangerous, and it needs to be cleaned up properly. If they do that and they bring it before the House, we will support it and get it passed, because it needs to be dealt with. But outside that criminal realm, the civil realm has defamation, which I think is a very, very effective, particularly if it's done by a media house or, somebody who also then amplifies it on a media house. I think that people should not be shy to take on people for defamation suits. It has to be done to the extent that people then literally learn sense that this thing must stop.
Great. Let's go a bit into the world of technology, which is not my my strength or anything. But you know how, for instance, on social media, they use, algorithms to be able to tell what they should, show someone, what you're interested in and all of that. Isn't it also possible for them to use the same to be able to, if you like, sieve information? They not be able to suppress what is not true, about someone, and then project what should be out there.
The social media platforms and their algorithms are actually designed to do the opposite.
They are my main problem.
They are designed to do the opposite in the sense that they are designed to amplify content that has early spread and traction. And what is a content that has early spread and traction? That is usually shocking content.
Yeah.
So content that appears to shock the sensibilities of people will quickly get clicked or shared. And once the algorithm realizes that this content within the last 5-10 minutes of its posting is getting a lot of clicking and sharing,
Yeah.
the algorithm will then amplify it and begin to show it to more people. So what usually happens is that when people do a lot of disinformation or put a lot of shocking material online, it goes way further than somebody who puts a passage in the Quran or the Bible there, or some decent motivational quotes there. No, you won't get clicks. And that is why you also find a lot of the media houses now responding to what they call clickbait. So they are also now forcing themselves to respond to the algorithms by rephrasing seemingly simple, mundane things into shocking narratives so that they would get people to click and share. So sometimes you can grant an interview where you simply say that, we are thinking about this. And you see a headline that says, shocking, MPP to do this, when you actually haven't said that. But they will rephrase it in that way because they are trying to respond to the algorithm. Once they do that, they'll get clickbait, it will get shared, and they'll make money on the back of it.
Yeah.
So the social media networks have not been very helpful.
Yeah.
That is why you'll find in the Americas, I think even in Europe, governments have taken on the big social companies. So you'd have seen Mark Zuckerberg and his people appearing before Congress to answer questions.
Yeah.
I think even in the UK,
Yeah.
they were
They
invited
can
to
do better. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Africa is so fragmented and so weak that we don't have a strong common platform to be able to respond. Recently, in one of the countries, I don't recall which one, they decided that kids under the age of, I think, 15 or 16 should not be allowed to have social media.
Yeah. I don't remember, but I also...
But you see strong governments taking on the social media companies because they are realizing that they are doing a lot of harm.
Yeah.
Particularly to the young
Absolutely.
people. Young people who are getting depressed, their worldviews are getting distorted because they are seeing their friends and other things through filters.
Yeah.
And are all of a sudden beginning to think that
look
good enough.
Right.
Look good enough. I need to go exploit this part of my body or do so and so.
Yeah.
So, and it's creating a whole distortion out there.
Right.
But in the end, you need governments, you need parliaments to be strong enough to take on these social media companies so that they get the algorithms right, or the harmful parts of these algorithms can then be taken out.
Great. Before we bring proceedings to a close, as if we are in court.
I know, right? What is your proceeding? I'm like, listen to the lawyer.
Maybe I am in court. Now, even beyond social media, you now have all these artificial intelligence tools that have also become another major problem.
Oh, that's a problem.
For instance, Grok.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, doing his own thing and all of that. Would you say that social media has caused a lot of harm compared to maybe the advantages that it has brought to civilization?
I wouldn't say social media has caused harm. I would say it's how we are using it. You can go to China and other places where TikTok is being used for business and for innovation and other things.
Yeah.
And you come to other parts of the world and TikTok has been reduced to ladies gyrating and, stripping naked and doing all sorts of things. Sometimes all that commentary and conversations. If your kids are around you, once it pops up, you quickly have to slide off because we are not using it in an appropriate manner.
Yeah.
Take artificial intelligence. It will take your instructions and produce material for you, which material you can use to advance business, design buildings, design all sorts of things. We have people using it for all sorts of things. Recently, we held a press conference in Parliament. Somebody sent me a photo of that same press conference where somebody had used AI to strip us naked, standing in the press hall. This is how the person had chosen to use it, to create content and to disinform and to ridicule. To what end? So it is not social media or artificial intelligence. It is the innate sensibilities of the people and how they are using it. Yeah. That is what is taking us astray. Because other people are using, I know media houses that are using AI for production and the kind of material they are churning out, to be able to inform producers and presenters deep research material that is helping advance conversations. And then there are people who are also using it for all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah.
So it's how we are using it.
Yeah.
It's our choice.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. And I find it difficult to accept that sometimes we are our own problem.
Oh, yeah.
Because in most places, like you mentioned, you find even young people taking advantage of social media. They set up businesses and they're running, very quickly, because of social media.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it is not being done in our part of the world, but majority of the people in our part of the world just tend to use it
for
negative things,
unfortunately.
to bring others down. And maybe we would get to a point where we try to, emancipate
ourselves from mental slavery, in the words of Bob Marley. Yeah?
Absolutely.
But I think one of the ways to achieve that is also to showcase a lot of examples of people who are using it the right way.
Yeah.
So a lot of young people who are using social media to do business and are doing well, are growing their businesses. We need to find a way to showcase them some more so that somebody sitting at home who's observing can realize that, I could use this thing in this particular manner. And maybe let me go that way instead of going south.
Right.
With it. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. It's amazing you said that because, here, part of what I'm planning to do is to bring on young people who have been able to set up businesses, because I've been doing like online, trading, if you like, for a very long time. I order, and I just like the fact that you have young people with their Instagram accounts, Facebook markets, and doing, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yes. So, is there anything else you would want to tell us before you leave? But I believe that you've been absolutely brilliant, and everyone who is going to watch this would benefit a lot, because I have learned a lot from you. Is there anything else you would tell us before you leave?
So I think, as I started off by saying, information is an instrument for communicating. And communication is one of the things, effective communication is one of the things that distinguishes the human species from dogs and cats and other living beings. It's our ability to communicate. My ability to find a concept and distill it and share it with you makes us able to work in synergy to achieve more than what I could have achieved and what you could have achieved. In fact, in the Bible, there's a story of a people in Babel who tried to build one of the highest towers. And the story is told that when God saw that they were united with one language and one purpose, he said the only way to stop them from this is by taking away the ability to communicate. And once the ability to communicate was taken away from them, there was confusion among them. They could no longer, if you told somebody that bring me a 2-inch brick, and he could not understand that what you were asking for was a 2-inch brick, the synergy in which he will bring it and you will lay it and will build faster is broken. You say 3-inch, he will bring 6-inch, and we can't go forward. And so God's disruption of what they were doing was by taking away the ability to communicate. So communication is the glue that allows the human species to do a lot more than any other living species. So it's something that must be taken very seriously. It's something that the managers of society in particular, managers of businesses, managers of homes, need to take very seriously to deepen, have a clear communication program, including the prebatals and the rebatals and the main dose of information dissemination, and to manage it deeply. If you're raising kids and you're not communing with them properly, they can't give you feedback. You can't get into their heads to help shape them. It's not about beating everything out of them. It's about reasoning with them so that you're going to raise kids that are going wayward. If you're running a business and you, the chief executive, or you, the head of the chambers, you are not communicating with your staff. There's no staff deba. There's no lawyers conference. There's no management meeting. People don't understand. We don't send emails around for people. We don't have a group platform on which we update ourselves that this was happening. There'll be chaos all around. And now also at the national level, if a government is doing something and is not communicating it, or the people's views are not being brought into government, there'll be chaos. So communication is a big deal. It's not an after the fact that when we finish, call the communicators and let them come and communicate it. No, it is the beginning and the end of all of this interaction. But while we are doing it, we should also be mindful of the fact that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation risk out there, and we have to invest in the architecture to combat it. We in Parliament will support any sensible bill that seeks to deal with the situation. And we think that the current architecture of what they are considering is not good enough. It needs to be tidied up, and we'll support to ensure that another layer is put on it. We also think that, for example, sections 207 and 208 of the Criminal Offences Act need higher thresholds because they are being abused now by the police and the government. You say something government doesn't like, and then they'll deliberately go under section 207 and 208. And we think that the judiciary needs to take a dim view of that and lift the thresholds, that with the deepening of our democracy, the standard should be very high to prove that this actually amounts to a breach of the peace, or this actually has the potential to create fear and panic, not some, imagination that it could. And we think that if we do that, we can respect what Article 21, Article 162, Article 163 provide for us in a manner that enhances our democracy and our livelihood.
Brilliant. So just to conclude, as you mentioned children with regards to communication, what you should tell them and what you shouldn't. I have had someone, who witnessed my conversation with my daughters, even when they were much younger. I mean, now they are...
They're big girls now.
Yeah, 15 and 11, And then the person said to me that I don't think you would have to be negotiating with your children. And then I said that I don't agree with that, because I believe that if they have something to say, I should listen to them.
Absolutely.
And they can actually make, superior arguments. And sometimes they do. So it's interesting you mentioned children. So I think that we should let our, viewers, if they're not doing it already, they should communicate with their children.
Yeah.
They should inform them. They should involve them, especially because they all have all these devices. They are exposed to, social media.
Yeah.
We are not able to censor a lot of things. And then they're just feeding all kinds of things that we might not even be aware of.
Traditionally, they are growing into a world that is more competitive than our world. A world where there's a lot more effort at forcing other views on them.
Yeah.
You need to raise them first to have their own point of view.
Yeah.
Second, to be able to express their point of view. Third, to be able to defend their point of view.
Absolutely.
And if they have to make a concession, what are the parameters for making that concession? Else you're going to raise kids that you have beaten into silence, kids that you have slapped every opinion out of. And when they go into a public space or they go somewhere and somebody tries to force a view on them, what they have been trained to do is just shut up and comply.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of kid you want to raise?
Unfortunate.
No. You want to raise kids who are helped to have a certain worldview.
Yeah.
So your job is to help them form a worldview, but not to shut them up.
Right.
And as they form it, let them be able to express it, defend it, and if they have to make a concession on it, they must be able to rationalize it within the parameters that, okay, I'm going to concede this because...
Yeah.
If not, you'll be disappointed in the kids you are raising.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Honorable Kojo
Hamida, thank you.
Nkrumah.
Thank you. You should invite me again.
I will. I'm so happy, and I thank you
Have a-
continuously, really. Yeah, because I mean, when I told you about this, it was short notice, etc. But you're like, it's fine. I would be here.
You are a sharp lawyer. I've been talking to you any day.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, viewers, we have been interacting with the Honorable Member of Parliament for Ofuasi Ayirebi constituency in the Eastern region of the Republic of Ghana. And then I believe that everyone has learned something from this interaction. We would bring him again in future. I thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.
Bye, guys.